Young doctor changed bandage for female millionaire in a coma. Shockingly, she woke up and... Young doctor changed bandage for female millionaire in a coma. Shockingly, she woke up and... Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. It was late in the evening at Ridgeway Medical Center, the kind of quiet hour when most of the hospital lights dimmed and the hallways fell into a soft hush. Dr. Ethan Cole, a young physician known for his calm focus and steady hands, pushed open the door to a private ICU suite. Inside, under the soft glow of monitors and machines, lay the woman the media once called the untouchable Empire Queen, a young millionaire who had fallen into a deep coma after a brutal highway accident nearly 1 year ago. Her name was Marissa Hale, and until tonight, nothing about her condition had changed. Ethan stepped closer to her bedside, the rhythmic beeping of her heart monitor guiding his breath. She looked peaceful, almost like she was resting, but there was a stillness to her that always struck him. Her long hair rested over the pillow like strands of gold, her face delicate yet hauntingly quiet. Despite her status, despite the headlines that once circled her life, she was just a patient now, someone who depended on the kindness and skill of strangers. Ethan pulled on a pair of fresh gloves, preparing to change the bandages along her upper torso. He worked gently, the way he always did, explaining softly what he was doing even though she could not respond. "You know," he whispered, his voice low but warm, "I still talk to you because part of me thinks you can hear." He paused, studying her for a moment. "Maybe you are fighting your way back in there. Maybe you are closer than we think." The room was silent except for the faint hum of machines and the whisper of fabric as he adjusted the sheets. Outside the window, the city lights flickered like distant stars, and for a brief moment, he wondered what her life had looked like before everything fell apart. People like her were always surrounded by noise, meetings, deals, spotlights, but now her world was reduced to wires, machines, and this quiet room. As Ethan lifted a fresh set of bandages, something unexpected happened. Her fingers twitched. It was small, barely noticeable, but he saw it. His breath caught. He leaned in, eyes fixed on her hand, waiting for another sign. "Marissa," he said softly. "Nothing." He reached for her wrist, gently placing 2 fingers against her skin. Her pulse remained steady, but something felt different. A flicker of possibility pushed through him, a spark he had not allowed himself to feel in months. He resumed his work carefully, trying not to startle himself with hope. As he re-wrapped the bandages, he spoke to her again, telling her about the weather, the nurse on duty who never drank her coffee on time, the silly joke one of the interns had told earlier. He had been doing this for months, small stories, gentle words, because something in him believed that lonely souls could hear kindness even through layers of sleep. And then it happened. A soft sound escaped her lips. Faint, breathy, but real. Ethan froze. The bandage roll slipped from his hand and hit the floor. He leaned closer, scanning her expression. Her eyelids trembled. Her chest lifted with a sharper inhale. And then, with a slow, fragile movement, her eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, wandering like they were searching through fog. Then they found him. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. "Marissa," he breathed. "Can you hear me? You are safe. You are in the hospital. I am Dr. Ethan Cole." Her lips parted, the faintest whisper escaping her. "You?" It was barely there, but it was real. Ethan reached for the call button with one hand while holding her wrist with the other, grounding her gently. "It is okay. I am here," he said, keeping his voice steady even as adrenaline surged through him. The monitors began to beep faster, responding to her sudden change. Footsteps echoed from the hallway as nurses rushed toward the room. But for Ethan, the world narrowed to the fragile miracle before him, the awakening of a woman no one had expected to rise again. And as her eyes focused on him, full of confusion, fear, and something else he could not name, he realized that nothing about this night would ever be the same again. This was the moment everything began to change. The room buzzed with sudden movement as nurses rushed in, checking monitors and adjusting equipment, but Ethan stayed right beside Marissa, grounding her through the confusion. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes darting around as if she were trying to understand a world she had not seen in nearly a year. Ethan leaned in, keeping his voice soft and steady. "You are safe, Marissa. You have been unconscious for a long time, but you are awake now. I am right here with you." Her gaze flickered toward him again, recognition not fully formed but curiosity present. The nurses exchanged glances filled with shock and relief. No one had expected this. Her vitals stabilized slowly, and the room eventually calmed. After the initial assessments, the team stepped out to give her space, leaving Ethan alone with her once more. He pulled a chair closer to the bed, settling into a position where she could easily see him if she opened her eyes again. She looked fragile, her breath shallow but steady. Her skin had regained a faint warmth he had not seen before tonight. For the first time in a long time, her body felt alive, responding, present. Ethan sat quietly, letting her rest, but his heart was pounding. He had been caring for her for months, speaking to her in quiet moments, sharing updates she could not respond to, hoping that somewhere deep inside, she could hear him. And now she was awake. Hours passed before she stirred again. It was still the middle of the night, the hospital quiet and dim, when she let out a soft exhale and opened her eyes once more. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Where am I?" Ethan leaned closer, his expression gentle. "You are at Ridgeway Medical Center. You were in an accident, a very serious one. You have been unconscious for a long time. But you are awake now, Marissa. You are safe." She blinked slowly, as though processing each word was a challenge. "How long?" she managed. Ethan hesitated, wanting to tell her the truth without overwhelming her. "About 11 months, he said softly. Her eyes widened slightly, but her body remained still, weighed down by exhaustion. "That long," she whispered. Ethan nodded, keeping his voice calm. "You do not have to think about all of that right now. Your body needs time. Your mind too. We will take this slowly, one moment at a time." Her breathing steadied a little as she closed her eyes again, not falling asleep, but trying to gather her scattered thoughts. Ethan watched her carefully, noting the faint tremble in her fingers as she adjusted her hand against the blanket. The once powerful businesswoman, known for commanding boardrooms and making headlines, now lay fragile before him, navigating the world again from scratch. Morning light seeped through the blinds, painting the room in soft gold. Marissa's eyelids lifted once more, meeting Ethan's gaze as he sat at her bedside, exactly where he had been all night. She studied him for a moment, her expression a mixture of curiosity and gratitude. "You stayed," she whispered. Ethan offered a gentle smile. "I wanted to be here when you woke up again." She took a slow breath, her voice weak. "You talked to me before. I remember a little. Not the words, but the sound." Ethan felt something warm stir in his chest. "I talk to you every day. I was not sure if you could hear me, but I hoped you could." Her gaze softened just a little, her eyes reflecting something fragile but genuine. "It helped," she said quietly. "I think it helped me find my way back." Ethan swallowed, feeling the weight of the moment settle between them. He had never imagined that his small acts, his quiet words, his careful care, had reached her in the dark place where she had been. But now, hearing it from her own lips, it hit him with unexpected force. "I am glad," he said softly. "You fought hard. You came back." She closed her eyes again, not out of fear but exhaustion. Waking up after so long took everything she had. Ethan watched her closely, making sure her breathing remained steady. As she drifted into a light, healing sleep, he leaned back in his chair, exhaling the tension he had held for months. She had returned. Against all odds, she had returned. And as he sat there in the quiet morning light, one truth settled into him with startling clarity. This was only the beginning of a journey neither of them could have predicted. But he would walk it with her, step by fragile step. The following morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting warm stripes across the room as Marissa slowly stirred awake. Her breathing was steadier now, her eyes opening with more awareness than the night before. Ethan stood at the counter near the window, reviewing her updated charts and lab reports. When he noticed her eyes open, he immediately stepped toward her bedside, his expression softening. "Good morning, Marissa," he said gently. "How are you feeling?" She blinked several times, adjusting to the light, before her gaze drifted toward him. Tired, she whispered, her voice still weak but clearer than the night before. And heavy. Ethan nodded with understanding. That is completely normal. You have been unconscious for almost a year. Your muscles, your lungs, your entire system is waking up slowly. It will take time, but we will go step by step. She took a slow breath, trying to steady herself. I do not remember the accident, she said quietly. That is also normal, Ethan replied. Your memory may come back in pieces, or it may not return at all. Do not force it. Your mind will recover at its own pace. Marissa closed her eyes briefly as if trying to pull fragments from somewhere deep in her thoughts, but nothing surfaced. Instead, an overwhelming sense of emptiness washed through her. Not fear. Exactly. Just the unsettling awareness that her life had continued without her for almost a year. Is everyone okay? She finally asked, her voice trembling. There were reports that I was not alone. Ethan paused, choosing his words with care. The emergency records focus on your arrival. We can go over the rest when you are stronger. Right now, I do not want to overwhelm you. Your health comes first. She nodded faintly, accepting the answer even though uncertainty lingered in her eyes. He could tell she wanted more information, but she was too weak to handle it. For now, gentle pacing was the key. A nurse entered the room then, carrying a tray of medical supplies. Good morning, Dr. Cole. Ms. Hale, she said softly. We are going to run your morning vitals and administer hydration. Ethan stepped aside to let the nurse work, but he remained close enough to observe Marissa's reactions. She flinched slightly at the touch of cold instruments, her body not yet accustomed to sensation after such prolonged stillness. Ethan leaned closer, speaking gently. You are doing great. Just breathe through it. She followed his instructions, focusing on his voice, the only steady thing in this unfamiliar reality. After the nurse finished, Ethan adjusted the bed to help Marissa sit up slightly. She winced as her muscles strained. It feels like my body forgot how to move, she whispered. In a way, it did, Ethan said with honesty. But we will retrain it. Physical therapy will begin once your strength improves. You will not go through this alone. She stared at him for a long moment. Why did you stay last night? Ethan held her gaze, surprised by the vulnerability in her question. Because it mattered, he said quietly. You waking up was a critical moment. I did not want you to open your eyes to an empty room. And besides, he hesitated, searching for the right words. I have been your attending physician for months. I have watched over your progress daily. I guess. I wanted to see you return. Her expression softened with something fragile and deep. I remember your voice, she murmured. Not the words, but the feeling. It was warm. It made the darkness seem less heavy. Ethan inhaled slowly, touched more deeply than he expected. Then I am glad I kept talking, he said. You were not as alone as it felt. A faint hint of emotion flickered across her face before exhaustion began to pull her energy down again. He noticed immediately. You need rest, he said gently. Your body is working harder than you think. She nodded, her eyelids growing heavier. Will you be here later? His heart tightened at the question. Yes, he said softly. I will check on you again soon. I am not going anywhere. Relief washed over her expression, and she let herself drift back into a light sleep, comforted by his presence. As Ethan stood over her, watching her breathing settle, he felt a shift deep within himself, something he had not expected when he stepped into her room months ago. She had returned to the world, fragile but fierce. And he knew, without a doubt, that he wanted to see her through every step of this journey, no matter how long it took. Over the next few days, Marissa's room became a quiet center of cautious hope as her body continued to wake up piece by piece. Each morning, Ethan entered with the same calm presence, always offering a gentle greeting and a reassuring smile before reviewing her vitals. Her strength grew slowly, and although her voice was still soft, her awareness sharpened with every passing hour. Sometimes, she asked small questions, simple things like what day it was or what the weather outside looked like. Other times, she fell into long silences, processing fragments of memory that flickered through her mind like passing shadows. Ethan encouraged her to take her time, never pushing her to recall more than she could handle. He noticed the way confusion occasionally clouded her eyes, particularly when she looked at the window, as if she were searching for something familiar beyond the glass. She was a woman who had once lived in a world of relentless motion, meetings, deadlines, cameras flashing, a world where she was expected to be strong and flawless at all times. Now, she was anchored to a bed, relearning how to move her fingers and speak more than a few words at a time. The contrast weighed on her, though she rarely voiced it. On the fourth morning after her awakening, Ethan found her staring at the ceiling with a troubled expression. He approached her bedside and gently asked, "How did you sleep?" She did not answer right away. Instead, she inhaled slowly, her brows knitting together. "Dr. Cole," she whispered, "why does everything feel wrong?" Ethan pulled a chair beside her bed and sat down, giving her his full attention. "Can you tell me what you mean?" She swallowed, struggling to articulate the feeling. "It is like my mind is awake, but my life is not," she murmured. "I feel like I am supposed to be somewhere else, doing something else, but I do not even remember what that something is." Ethan nodded slowly, recognizing the emotional weight behind her words. "You have been out of your life for almost a year, Marissa," he explained gently. "Your mind is trying to catch up to a world that kept moving without you. It is natural to feel displaced. It will take time for everything to reconnect." Her eyes drifted toward him, filled with a quiet vulnerability. "Was I important?" Ethan felt a slight tightening in his chest at the question. "Yes," he said softly. "You were very important. You built a company from the ground up. You were admired, respected. People looked to you for leadership." She blinked, absorbing the information as if she were hearing about a stranger. "That feels far away," she whispered, "like it belonged to someone else." "Memories do not return all at once," Ethan said. "They come back in flashes or in moments triggered by sound, scent, or emotion. Do not force yourself. Let your mind open naturally." She nodded faintly, but then her gaze drifted back to her hands resting weakly on the blanket. "I do not feel like a leader," she said, her voice breaking. "I cannot even lift a cup of water without help." Ethan leaned forward, his tone firm but gentle. "Strength is not measured by how much weight you can lift or how fast you can walk. Strength is surviving something that should have taken you. Strength is waking up after 11 months in the dark. And strength," he paused, letting his words settle, "is choosing to fight your way back even when everything feels unfamiliar." Her eyes filled with a shimmer of emotion, but she blinked it away quickly, refusing to let tears fall. Ethan admired her resilience, even in this fragile state. She had always been known as a woman who never cracked under pressure, but seeing her vulnerability made her feel more human, more real than the powerful figure the world once saw. A nurse entered then with a tray of soft foods for Marissa to try. Ethan helped adjust her pillow, guiding her gently as she attempted her first bites. Her hands trembled, and the spoon moved unsteadily, but he did not rush to take over. He let her struggle through it, offering quiet encouragement when she succeeded and reassurance when she faltered. "You are doing well," he said softly. "Every effort counts." When she finished, she leaned back against the pillows, exhausted but proud. She looked at him with a soft, grateful expression. "Thank you for being patient with me," she whispered. "I do not know how to do this." Ethan stood, placing a comforting hand on the rail of her bed. "You do not have to know how," he said. "That is why I am here. We will take this step by step. And when you cannot hold yourself up, I will help you stand." She held his gaze, something shifting quietly between them, something fragile, unspoken, but undeniably present. And for the first time since waking, her voice carried a hint of steady courage as she murmured, "Then I will try. No matter how slow it is. I will try." And Ethan felt something inside him anchor even deeper, knowing he would walk this difficult road with her for as long as she needed. Days continued to pass, and with each sunrise Marissa gained a little more of herself back. The doctors adjusted her medications, physical therapists began light exercises with her, and slowly her muscles responded with small but meaningful progress. Sitting up for longer periods, lifting her arms with assistance, and taking sips of water without trembling became victories worth celebrating. Yet in the quiet moments between therapies, she often found herself studying Ethan with a kind of silent curiosity. She had grown accustomed to his voice, the patient calm that anchored her whenever confusion washed over her. He was becoming a constant in a world that still felt unfamiliar. One afternoon, after a session left her visibly tired, Ethan entered the room, holding a small portable speaker. Marissa raised an eyebrow weakly. What is that for? He smiled gently. Your mind and body need stimulation. Music can help relaxation, memory retrieval, and emotional grounding. He placed it on the table and let soft instrumental music fill the room. The sound was warm and distant, like something forgotten but comforting. Marissa's eyes drifted closed as she whispered, I think I know this melody. Ethan nodded. Good. That means your memory is waking up too. She let out a slow breath. It feels like someone is knocking on a door inside my head, she said softly. I just cannot seem to open it fully. That is completely normal, Ethan reassured. Memories return in layers, not all at once. Your brain is reconnecting pathways that have been dormant for nearly a year. She listened silently, her expression a mixture of longing and frustration. After a moment, she opened her eyes and looked at him. What was I like before all of this? Ethan hesitated, aware of the weight behind such a question. You were strong, he said carefully. Driven, confident. People around you depended on you. You built something powerful from nothing. She absorbed his words slowly, her gaze falling to her hands. And now I cannot even walk, she murmured. Ethan's tone softened. Strength is not about what you can do now. It is about what you are willing to fight for. And I see that fight in you every single day. She held his gaze for a long moment before nodding faintly. Later that evening, Marissa attempted her first assisted standing exercise. The physical therapist guided her gently, while Ethan stood nearby in case she faltered. As she placed her feet on the floor, her legs trembled violently. Her breath hitched, panic flickering in her eyes. I cannot, she whispered, gripping the bed rails. I cannot do it. Ethan stepped forward immediately, his voice steady but firm. Yes, you can. You are safe. We are right here with you. She looked at him, her breath shallow and uneven. My body feels too heavy. I am going to fall. Ethan shook his head gently. If you fall, we will hold you up. You are not alone in this. Something in his voice grounded her. Slowly, with help from the therapist, she pushed through the trembling and rose to her feet. Her entire body shook, but she was standing, something she had not done in nearly a year. Her eyes widened with disbelief, her voice barely audible. I am up. Ethan felt a wave of admiration rush through him. Yes, he said softly. You are. Tears filled her eyes, not from pain, but from the overwhelming realization of what she had just accomplished. She sank back onto the bed with help, her breath shaky but full of pride. I thought I would never feel this again, she whispered. Ethan knelt beside her, his expression full of quiet sincerity. This is just the beginning. Every day will bring something new to reclaim. Her chest rose and fell as she tried to steady her emotions. Thank you, she said, her voice trembling. I do not know if I could do this without you. Ethan held her gaze, something warm flickering in his eyes. You are the one doing the work, Marissa. I am just here to help you through it. But she shook her head faintly. No, it is more than that. When I open my eyes, you are here. When I am afraid, you steady me. When I feel lost, your voice brings me back. Ethan's breath caught slightly at her words, though he masked it with a gentle smile. Then I will keep showing up, he said softly. As long as you need me. For the first time, a small genuine smile appeared on her lips, fragile but real. It was the kind of smile that hinted at something quietly growing between them, something neither of them dared name yet. And as evening settled outside her window, painting the room in warm shades of gold, Marissa whispered, Then I think I can do this, one step at a time. And Ethan, watching her with a depth of emotion he could no longer deny, knew she was not the only one changing with each step. In the days that followed her first attempt at standing, Marissa's progress continued in small but meaningful increments. Each morning brought a new challenge, and each night brought a quiet victory. Physical therapy sessions became part of her daily routine, and although every movement felt like lifting 100 pounds, she pushed through with a determination that surprised even herself. Ethan remained a constant presence, guiding her through each step, offering steady encouragement when her strength faltered. His calm voice and patient demeanor became the anchor she depended on. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult session, Marissa sat in her bed with her shoulders slumped, sweat beading along her forehead, her hands trembling lightly from the strain. She looked frustrated and defeated as she whispered, I used to run entire companies, and now I can barely sit up without help. Ethan pulled a chair closer and sat beside her, his expression soft and unwavering. And yet you are doing it, he said calmly. Every day you do a little more than the day before. You may not see it, but I do. She looked down at her hands, curling her fingers slowly as if reacquainting herself with them. It feels like I am learning to be human again, she said quietly. Ethan leaned forward slightly. Maybe that is not a bad thing, he said. Sometimes life strips everything away so we can rebuild with what actually matters. She looked up at him, studying him with those clear but tired eyes. You talk like someone who has rebuilt himself before, she whispered. Ethan's expression shifted, something flickering behind his calm exterior, but he did not elaborate. Instead, he stood and adjusted her pillows gently. This is about you, not me, he said, though his tone held the weight of unspoken truth. That night, as the hallway lights dimmed, and the hospital settled into its usual hush, Ethan returned to check on her one last time. He expected to find her asleep, but she was awake, staring out the window with a distant, contemplative look. Could not sleep? He asked softly. She turned her head slightly toward him. I keep thinking about the life I left behind, she murmured. The meetings, the pressure, the people expecting me to lead them. I do not know if I can be that person again. Ethan moved closer. Who says you have to go back to who you were? She blinked, surprised by his question. You were successful, yes. But maybe you do not need to be that version of yourself anymore. Maybe waking up gave you a chance to choose differently. She let out a slow breath. I do not even know who I am now. Ethan took a moment, his voice thoughtful but steady. You are someone who fought her way back from the edge. Someone who did not give up, even in the dark. Someone who is learning courage in small steps every day. You may not see it, but I do. Her eyes softened, glistening faintly under the dim light. You always seem to know exactly what to say, she whispered. It is not that, he replied softly. I just say what is true. A quiet moment passed between them, filled with something unspoken but deeply felt. The world outside the window was still, the city lights glowing like distant embers against the night sky. After a moment, she swallowed and said, Will you sit with me for a little while? Ethan hesitated only for a second before pulling a chair to her bedside. Of course, he replied. She shifted slightly, making room for him in her quiet world, and for the first time, she reached out, her hand brushing lightly against his. It was not a request for help, nor a moment of weakness. It was simple, intentional connection. Ethan froze for a moment, surprised by the gesture, but then gently intertwined his fingers with hers. Her hand was warm and fragile, yet filled with a quiet strength he admired more than he could express. She closed her eyes, letting the moment ground her. I do not feel as afraid when you are here, she whispered. Ethan's chest tightened, the words landing deeper than she knew. Then I will stay, he said softly, and he did. They sat like that for a long time, her breathing steady, his presence calm, the quiet between them growing heavier with meaning. In that fragile silence, something shifted again, deeper, quieter, undeniable. And though neither of them said it out loud, they both understood. This was no longer just doctor and patient. Something more was beginning to take root in the spaces between their words, their fears, and the steady beating of their hearts. The days leading up to Marissa's discharge felt strangely heavy. Even though they marked a milestone everyone had been waiting for, she had progressed from assisted standing to taking a few shaky steps with support, and her strength, though limited, was finally steady enough for her to continue recovery outside the hospital. Yet instead of the excitement one might expect, there was an unspoken tension lingering in the air, a quiet fear neither she nor Ethan dared to voice. On the morning of her discharge, sunlight poured into the room in warm, golden stripes. Marissa sat at the edge of the bed, dressed in simple, comfortable clothes instead of a hospital gown. Her hair was combed neatly, her posture straighter than it had been in months, but her hands trembled softly in her lap. Ethan entered the room holding a clipboard with her final paperwork, but the moment he saw her expression, he paused, setting it gently on the counter. You look like someone who just received bad news, he said softly. She forced a small smile. Maybe I am just scared. Ethan pulled a chair in front of her and sat down, his eyes never leaving hers. Talk to me. What is scaring you? She inhaled slowly, her brows knitting together. This room, this bed, these halls, they have been my entire world since I woke up. When I step outside today, I will be stepping into a life I barely remember, a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. Ethan nodded, listening with the kind of attention that made her feel seen. It is normal to be afraid of the unknown, he said gently. But you are not going back to that life alone. You will have help, support, and time. You do not need to carry everything at once. She looked down at her hands, the tremble returning. When I woke up, you were the first thing I saw. You have been the only steady thing in all of this. What am I supposed to hold on to when you are not there every morning? Ethan felt the breath leave his chest for a moment. Her honesty cut through the room like a quiet truth neither had spoken out loud until now. He leaned forward, his voice low and sincere. Marissa, just because you are leaving the hospital does not mean you are losing me. She looked up sharply, her eyes widening with surprise. He held her gaze, allowing the weight of his words to settle. I will still be here, he continued. I will still be part of your recovery. I will not disappear from your life just because you are going home. Emotion flickered across her expression, relief, gratitude, and something deeper that neither of them dared name. A knock on the door broke the moment, and a nurse stepped inside with a wheelchair. Ready to go, Miss Hale? She asked. Marissa hesitated before answering. Ethan stood and offered his hand. After a moment, she placed her hand in his, letting him help her rise. Her legs were unsteady, but he supported her gently as she eased into the wheelchair. As they rolled through the hallway, hospital staff smiled and greeted her, many of them having watched her fight her way back from the brink. She offered polite smiles, but her attention stayed fixed on Ethan, who walked beside her, his presence grounding her with every step. When they reached the hospital entrance, the automatic doors slid open, revealing the outside world, the city bustling, cars moving, people rushing from place to place. Marissa stared at it all, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of life happening beyond the glass she had looked through for months. It feels too big, she whispered. Ethan knelt beside her, so they were eye level. Then start with something small, he said softly. Start with one breath, one step, one moment. You do not have to conquer the world today. You just have to come outside. She looked into his eyes, finding the same calm steadiness she had relied on since the night she woke up. And with a slow, shaky breath, she nodded. When Ethan helped her stand, she leaned on him more than she intended, but he did not pull away. Together, they walked out into the fresh air. The breeze brushed against her face, carrying scents she had long forgotten, street food, exhaust, blooming flowers somewhere nearby. Marissa closed her eyes, letting it all flood her senses. When she opened them again, Ethan was still beside her. You see, he said gently. You did it. She exhaled a trembling laugh. I guess I did. He smiled, something warm lighting his eyes. And this is only the beginning. She felt her chest tighten, not with fear this time, but with a quiet, growing trust. A trust that belonged not to the powerful woman she used to be, but to the woman she was becoming. And as she looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper, she said, Thank you, Ethan, for everything. Ethan shook his head softly. This is your journey, Marissa. I am just walking beside you. But in that moment, with the sunlight warming her skin and the world opening before her, she realized something profound. She did not want him to walk beside her only as a doctor. And Ethan, watching her take her first steps into a new life, realized he did not want that either. Marissa's transition home was both liberating and overwhelming. The moment she stepped into her penthouse, she felt as if she were walking into a stranger's life. Everything was pristine, elegant, and expensive, but none of it felt familiar. Her assistants had stocked the kitchen, cleaned every room, and prepared her living space with meticulous care, yet she felt a quiet disconnect from the world she had once built. Ethan accompanied her for the initial evaluation, walking beside her as she slowly explored her own home. Her steps were shaky, her hand gripping the railing as she moved through the living room, taking in the glass walls, the breathtaking skyline, and the echoes of a life she could not recall. It looks like something out of a magazine, she whispered. Does it feel like yours? Ethan asked gently. She shook her head. Not yet. He watched her carefully, making sure she stayed balanced as she walked. Her body was still adjusting to movement, and every step required effort, but she pushed forward with that familiar determination he had grown to admire. As she approached the large windows, she pressed a hand against the cool glass, her reflection staring back with eyes that seemed both new and old. Who was I? She asked softly. Ethan stepped beside her. Someone powerful, someone respected, someone who carried a lot on her shoulders. She let out a faint exhale. And now I am someone who needs help climbing a single staircase. Ethan's voice softened. And someone who survived. Someone who woke up when no one expected her to. Someone rebuilding. That takes a different kind of strength. His words settled over her like a warm blanket, grounding her once more. Over the next week, Ethan visited regularly as part of her rehabilitation schedule. He guided her through exercises, monitored her vitals, and ensured she adapted safely to her home environment. But as the days passed, their conversations grew deeper, extending beyond medicine and recovery. They talked about music, about books, about the little memories that resurfaced in fragments. Marissa began to laugh more, a sound that surprised even her. One afternoon, he found her sitting on the balcony wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft oranges and pinks. It is beautiful, she murmured. I do not remember loving sunsets, but this feels right. Ethan pulled a chair beside her. Maybe some things are part of who you are, even if your memories have not caught up. She turned toward him, studying his face closely. You always know how to say the right thing, she said softly. You think it is the right thing, he replied, his tone warm. I just speak honestly. A quiet moment passed between them, filled with gentle tension. Her eyes lingered on his for a beat too long, and he looked away briefly, gathering himself. Their connection had grown thicker, undeniable, yet fragile in its newness. The following day, she attempted her first walk outside her building. Ethan accompanied her, letting her set the pace. The city felt larger than she remembered, the sounds louder, the movement overwhelming. She paused frequently, her breaths uneven, but Ethan remained close, offering his steady presence. They reached a small park a block away, and she sat on the bench, exhausted but proud. I did it, she said with a weak smile. You did, he replied gently. And tomorrow you will do a little more. She looked at him, her eyes warm but searching. Do you think I will ever feel like myself again? He hesitated, then answered honestly. I think you will become yourself again, even if that self looks different from the past. Healing does not return you to who you were. It makes you into someone new. She let his words settle before whispering, I am afraid of the new. Ethan turned toward her, his voice soft but steady. Then let me walk into it with you. Her breath caught. She studied him, her heart stirring in a way she had not felt since waking. Are you sure? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I am, he replied, the truth clear in his eyes. A gentle breeze passed between them, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. She felt something inside her shift, quietly, subtly, but undeniably. She reached for his hand, her fingers brushing his before settling fully around them. He did not pull away. He held her hand with the same steady support he had shown from the moment she woke. And in that quiet moment, with the evening lights softening around them, Marissa realized that this small, fragile connection was becoming the one part of her life that made perfect sense. Weeks passed, and the small steps Marissa took began forming the foundation of a new life. She continued her physical therapy at home, with Ethan supervising much of her progress. But their connection had shifted into something deeper, something that neither of them attempted to hide anymore. Every morning he arrived with a warm greeting and gentle encouragement, and every evening he left with a lingering look that told her their bond was no longer just professional. One crisp afternoon, after a successful session where she managed to walk across her living room without assistance, Ethan suggested they take a break on the balcony. Marissa agreed, settling into her favorite chair as he pulled another beside her. The sky was beginning to turn a soft amber as the sun dipped lower. She leaned back, inhaling calmly, feeling her body stronger than it had been since waking. Do you ever think about how strange this all is? She asked quietly. Ethan glanced toward her, his expression open. What do you mean? All of it, she said, gesturing lightly. I woke up with no memories. My life feels like a puzzle missing half its pieces. And the person I remember most clearly is you. Ethan held her gaze, his face softening. Maybe I just happened to be the one who was there when you opened your eyes. She shook her head gently. No, It is more than that. You are the one constant in all of this. I feel safe with you in a way I cannot explain, and that feeling has carried me through every step. Ethan inhaled slowly, as if steadying himself. Marissa, I need to tell you something, he said, his voice lower than before. There is a line between doctor and patient that should never be crossed. I have been careful, but the truth is, somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as just my patient. She felt her breath catch, her heart tightening in her chest. Ethan, he shook his head gently. You do not owe me anything. I just want you to know that what I feel is real, and it has nothing to do with obligation or circumstance. Her eyes softened, glistening under the fading sunlight. I know, she whispered, because I feel it too. Silence settled between them, warm and profound. The world outside continued its rhythm, but here on the balcony, time seemed to pause. After a long moment, she looked down at her hands, then back at him. But there is something else, she said. Something I need your help with. Ethan sat up straighter. Anything. She swallowed gently. I want to face my past. The people I left behind. My company. My life before the accident. I cannot step into my future until I know what my old life truly was. Ethan nodded slowly, fully understanding the weight of what she was asking. Then I will help you, he said. We will face it together, at your pace. The following week, he drove her to her company headquarters. The towering glass building loomed over the city, a reflection of the empire she had once built. As she stepped out of the car with Ethan's steady hand supporting her, employees gasped, tears filling their eyes at the sight of her standing there alive. Her return was nothing short of a miracle. Inside the boardroom, her executives greeted her with a mix of awe and emotion. She addressed them gently, her voice still soft but steadier now. I may not remember everything, she said, but I remember what it feels like to fight for something. And I am ready to learn again. The room erupted in quiet applause, full of respect for the woman, who had returned not as a flawless leader, but as someone stronger for her journey. After the meeting, she and Ethan walked slowly through the lobby. She stopped near the large window overlooking the city below. I thought stepping into this place would make me feel like an imposter, she whispered. But instead, I just feel ready. Ethan smiled, pride warm in his eyes. You rebuilt everything inside yourself before you ever stepped back into this building. That is real strength, Marissa. She turned toward him, her heart full. I would not have made it this far without you. Ethan shook his head gently. You would have. I just walked beside you. She stepped closer, her voice soft but sure. Then keep walking beside me. Not as my doctor, but as the person I am choosing. Ethan held her gaze, emotion tightening in his chest. I want that more than anything, he said. She reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. And as they stood together in the quiet glow of her reclaimed world, Marissa knew she was no longer defined by the life she had before the accident, nor by the months of darkness she had endured. She was defined by the strength she discovered, the courage she chose, and the love she found in the most unexpected place. And with Ethan beside her, she stepped forward, not into her old life, but into the new one they would build together.